Okay, I'm going to give you a very quick rundown on how to use the Canon C300 if you've never used one before. So the first thing to consider is what format are you shooting. 99% of the time, if you're shooting in the USA or an NTSC area, you're going to be shooting 30p, and if you're shooting in PAL in areas like the UK, you're going to be shooting 25p. Like I say, 99% of the time, but never just make that assumption. Always check with the director or check with production. There's all kinds of reasons why people might want to be shooting on a different format from what you expect. It might be for the foreign market, they might be cutting it into another program, or and especially now, I think that there are more standards. People are starting to shoot 4K, 50p, all sorts of different resolutions. So anyway, always check. So how do you do that? Well, let's have a look at this. So this is the Canon C300, the first model, not the Mark II. So with this, the first thing you want to do is press the menu button. You press the menu button on the back, and then you scroll down to the spanner symbol. So as you scroll down, you'll find NTSC/PAL, so you can change that to NTSC if you're shooting in the US or another NTSC country. You've got your bitrate and resolution. On this camera, since it only goes as high as 1080, so HD, you're pretty much definitely going to be shooting on that. There might be some projects you're shooting at lower resolutions like 720, which you can find there. Then you've got your frame rate. This is where you can choose from progressive, so 25p, or interlaced if it's for a sports program or something like that. Okay, so we'll come out of that menu, we just hit the menu button. So that shows us how we can be shooting the correct format on the camera. So in order to get the best pictures out of the camera, there are really 5 main things that we need to think about to get decent pictures. So the first one of those is white balance. What color are the images that you're shooting? And the next 4 are really, all of them are affecting how bright or dark the image is, how much light is getting onto the sensor. And several different things affect that. So we've got the ND filters in front of the lens. We've got the ISO or the gain. We've got the iris control. So the iris is inside the lens, letting in a large amount of light or a small amount of light. And then we've also got the shutter. So we'll look at each one of those individually. Each of these separate functions can be reached with the function button, which is located on the back of the camera here. Each time you press it, it scrolls through to a different section. So we start off with white balance, and then we've got the ISO or the gain, and then the shutter. The iris can be controlled by the smaller wheel, which is, I'll just move that around so you can see it, smaller wheel, which is down here. So you've got this one that sort of scrolls through the menu items, and this one here that operates the iris. So let's start with white balance. The first setting we've got here is K, which stands for Kelvin, and this allows you to manually dial in the color temperature. So whatever temperature you want. If you think that if you're light source, you might know it's 6,000, so you dial in 6,000. If you know that you're shooting tungsten, you might want to dial in 3,200 Kelvin. To dial it in, you just press the white balance button, which is here on the side of the camera. You can see it's just 2 triangles and a square. If you're not using the C300, by the way, that's a kind of universal system. All cameras will have that same symbol for white balance. So press the button like so, and then you can use it again using that same dial wheel that you used before in the menu, and you can roll that around to whatever number you want. When you've finished, hit that button, the enter button, and you're done. Let's move down to the next one. So we've done manually dialing in your white balance. What are the other options? So again, press the function button. That gets us back onto Kelvin, and you roll this wheel down, the top wheel, and the first one we've got to there is A. So it's, all cameras have this, but it's like kind of memory function. So what you do with that is obviously you hold your white card up to whatever light you want to take a reading from. So if you're doing an interview, make sure the card is right where the interviewee's face is. There's no point in putting it just in front of the camera. It's not going to work. So you put it right where their face is. If you can't zoom in or you don't have a long enough lens, pick the camera up, go over to the card, and you want to take the white balance reading. Okay, so again on this, you've got that white balance symbol. It's the same symbol on the side there. I haven't got anything white. Actually, I can just point at the wall. So if we press that button, it starts, the white starts flashing, it takes a reading, and it gives us our reading, 56K, which is what you would expect here. It's just daylight flooding in, there is no tungsten lighting. 56 sounds about right. Okay, so that gives us our A memory. If we hit the function button again and scroll down, we get to B. Same thing again. It's just the reason you've got two of them is you may be shooting something where, let's say, you're moving from room to room. Let's imagine one of them is got a mixture of daylight and tungsten, and it's like 4,000, and then you're going to another room later on that's pure daylight and it's 6,000 or something. And you keep moving between those two rooms. There's no point in having to keep retesting and retesting every time. It's just good to keep them in the memory, and then you can just flick between them as you go from room to room. That's why that's there. Okay, the next function we're going to look at is ISO, or gain. So what is ISO? ISO is just a standard in a way that with film cameras, you used to have ASA, a similar thing. So a faster film would allow more light onto it, and you'd be able to shoot in dark conditions. And ISO is doing a similar thing as you dial the numbers higher. But as you dial the numbers higher, obviously it's going to impact the quality of the image. If you go too high with the ISO, the image is going to start looking grainy and noisy. So each camera is rated at a certain ISO, i.e. the images at that particular number will be the best that the camera can produce. So this camera is rated at 850. So let's press that function button again, and you'll see that at the ISO, again, it's the same buttons. You just roll around with that top wheel. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, the lowest ISO you get is 320. And as you increase that, 400, 500, up to 850, 850 has a bracket around it to help you know that that is the native ISO. As you go, you can go higher than that, but I would recommend, wherever possible, not doing that. I mean, obviously there might be some situations where you don't have enough light and you're forced to. Well, obviously in that situation you just have to do it. It's better to do it on the camera at that point than it is to shoot at a low ISO and then boost it up in post. It's best just to use it, but wherever possible, shoot at 850. And I think if you bring the ISO down, blocking out some of the lights, I don't see that as a problem. I haven't seen any adverse effects from lowering. So if you're shooting at 200 or whatever, or 350 ISO, that isn't a problem. Shooting beyond 1600 ISO, you're going to get some kind of grain. So the iris is obviously it's a mechanical device inside the lens. Usually it would be controlled on the outside of the lens, but on the Canon camera it isn't. It's controlled via the camera body. So this wheel here will select which iris you want. Obviously, the wider you open the iris, the more light you're going to get into the camera, and at the same time the smaller the depth of field. So there'll be a lot out of focus as you open that iris up. As you close it down very small, you block the light out, but you maintain more of the image, so more of the image will be in focus. Let's move on to the next function. We'll look at ND. This is a really simple one. The ND buttons are here, so you can put more ND in or take out ND. And ND is really simple. It's just like putting a pair of sunglasses in front of the lens. So you can do that to block out light. You might have a situation where you want your iris wide, you want a very shallow depth of field, so you're letting lots of light in, but you'll have too much light on your image potentially. So the way to get rid of some of that light is to drop in NDs of various strength. So of our 4 items that control the amount of light on the camera, the last thing we're looking at is shutter. Again, if we go back to the function button, hit the function button, and we highlight the shutter. So at the moment we are set to 1/50th here. That's because I've been shooting PAL at 25p, and the shutter, you normally want it to be double the frame rate. So if you're shooting in the US and you're shooting 30p, you really want your shutter to be at 1/60th of a second. Equally, if you increase, so if you were shooting in the US and you're shooting 60p and you think I want to shoot some half speed footage, so I'm going to shoot, instead of shooting 30p, I'm going to shoot 60p, you need to double your shutter and you'd shoot at 1/20th of a second. That will keep your images looking sharp. If you go beyond that and you start putting more shutter in, the image starts to look slightly juddery. If you think of those shots in Private Ryan where they're running around and so that, you know, and there's explosions and rocks flying everywhere and it all looks very juddery. That's shot at a high shutter rate, and that's an example of how to use the shutter creatively. Okay, so those were 5 very simple tips just to get you up and running on the Canon C300 if you haven't used it before. There will be lots more videos coming that are much more in depth. So if you're interested and you want to learn more about the camera, go to the website and the details are below on the YouTube video, or if you're already on the site, you'll be able to look through and choose whichever video is helpful to you. Thanks for watching.